Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As many of you have been observing many elections over the year, but I never encountered when, to get to the second round, you had to draw a lot. So this is something maybe we can add in our experience as election observers throughout the OSCE. But dear members of Parliament, dear friends, Excellencies, it's indeed a great pleasure to be here with you today in Vancouver to attend the 30th annual session at such a critical time and of historical importance indeed. My thanks, of course, go to President Margarita Satterfield, to Secretary General Montella and his staff for this invitation and for the opportunity to recall the importance of the human dimension and that this must continue to play within the OSCE, including through the advancement of the strong cooperation that we have already between the OSCE and ODIHR. And as a former member of this assembly, it's also a very special pleasure to be here and be hosted by my dear friend, former colleague Heidi Fry, the head of the Canadian delegation. And thank you once again for the hospitality, but also for your very, very strong leadership over so many years within the OSCE. So thank you once again. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 16 months since the war in Ukraine began, and it is the impact of this war is plain for all of us to see, not just on the global security architecture, but also on the lives of many thousands of civilians who have been killed, injured, or forced to flee. In these tragic circumstances, I remain convinced that the prominence that human rights and fundamental freedoms have in creating sustainable peace and security. It is when fundamental freedoms and human rights are restricted or violated, the democratic standards and institutions are undermined. It is when civil society voices are constrained, the security becomes fragile and our society suffers. The OSCE, and particularly ODIHR, stands for the belief in the vital role of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, as reaffirmed through our commitments over the last decades. And from here, from our human dimension, we need to shape our response to today's security challenges. Not only preserving, but indeed further strengthening the human dimension of the OSCE is therefore, in my view, the most important contribution we can make to peace and security in our region. And let me be very clear. These efforts need to be, first and foremost, towards ensuring full accountability for any human rights violations at the national as well as the international level as the basis for ensuring justice and preventing further violence, as we are seeing as a consequence of Russia's military attack in Ukraine. But at the same time, to truly advance the human dimension of the OSCE, we must find the courage to recommit to genuine and effective dialogue. Dialogue has always been at the heart of the OSCE as an organization and for the values it personifies. As a multilateral platform, the OSCE has brought together countries with systems of governments and security priorities that were very different from each other. And these created lasting bonds through the binding political commitment that each of these countries have made over the years. The OSCE has offered hope and aspiration to the 1.3 billion people of our region for almost 50 years now, as visions of peace and tolerance endured, even if when times were grim, and the sound of words and heated discussion was replaced by the sound of the barrels of the guns. As we witness a new tragedy of war today, I believe we cannot afford to lose those hopes and aspirations that were laid out in the Helsinki Final Act in 1975. We cannot allow that military actions will become the preferred choice for resolving political and geopolitical issues. So, while continuing to call for a stop to the violation of these commitments and of international law, we need to continue to work towards multilateral engagements as the only sustainable path towards improving the situation today and the best solution to our global challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, ODIHR works resolutely in this direction, advancing its mandate and supporting OSCE countries through open dialogue in moving towards resilient democracies based on human rights. We have been doing this for more than 3 decades now, including by raising concerns and warning about weakening human rights protections or repression of civil society organizations and human rights defenders, including ahead of today's war in Ukraine. Many of you are familiar with the numerous initiatives and activities that ODIHR has put in place since the beginning of the war in Ukraine. For example, our human rights monitoring reports, the third of which will be published later this month. Our assistance to the Ukrainian Parliament, and I greet also the colleagues from the Ukrainian Parliament in the room today, our support to the judiciary in Ukraine with targeted expertise on international human rights law, our training to assist the countries neighboring Ukraine in combating human trafficking, our support to human rights defenders who are working in and on Ukraine. And I could continue. But we are also well aware that there are 57 countries in the OSCE, and none of them is a perfect democracy. With this in mind, we therefore continue to support countries across the region. And indeed, our mandate and approach to the human dimension, when governments and civil society are willing and able to engage, is holistic and includes the many different aspects that makes our society more free, inclusive, and just. One way in which we do this is through, as you know, our election observation activities and our election reform assistance to achieve open competition between genuine alternative political offers, often together with you at the Parliamentary Assembly. Democratic elections are key to the long-term security of the entire region, and we are grateful for your partnership in this vital work. Another important and growing area of this work are our legal opinions, which feed into key reform processes. Then there are the capacity building that we provide, for example, to police and prosecutors to help them better uphold the fundamental rights of every individual, including minorities and migrants. There is our promotion of gender equality and women's leadership, and our work to combat hate crime, which so often, unfortunately, targets those who are most vulnerable in our societies, as well our support to human rights defenders and their advocacy at times of increasing pressure that we see happening across the OSCE region. Ladies and gentlemen, all fundamental freedoms, human rights, and democratic principles are interrelated. If the support sustaining one falls, the chances are that others will follow. And the risks to democracy and human rights of today become the security risks of tomorrow. But while ODIHR continues to deliver, the constraints we are facing are substantial. As we navigate the third consecutive year without an approved budget by the OSCE, working on monthly allotments of zero nominal growth budget, our ability to ensure the continuation of our activities and to respond in a positive and constructive way to requests of assistance has been put under severe strain. This will become even more apparent in the coming weeks, and I would like this to share with you because this could have an impact also in our cooperation with the Parliamentary Assembly. In fact, in around 10 days, I expect that we will have to go to Vienna with a request for additional financial resources from participating states to support our work for observing the elections in the remainder of 2023. And although we have to make such requests in the past, they have never been needed so early in the year. We are basically half the year in 2023. And this is putting a question mark over our ability to observe important upcoming elections in the OSCE region, namely in Poland and in Moldova. Eventually, we hope that consensus will be found and that additional financial resources will be made available to us by the end of July. But there are no certainties. Let me close by saying that against the background of these challenges to human rights and democracy, as well to our ability to function as an organization, ODIHR's close partnership with the OSCE is indeed more important than ever. And this is why I am here physically today with you. I thank you once again for your attention and support, and I look forward to our continued cooperation and discussion. Thank you very much.